Welcome to the Eddie Hyatt Podcast. I'm your host and teacher, Eddie Hyatt. So glad to be back with you today and pick up and continue our journey through the book of Acts. Been a very busy time here at Hyatt International Ministries launching the Hyatt Institute, which is the fulfillment of a 30-year vision to have a Bible training center. And when this desire was first birthed in our hearts, it was a time before there was internet, and so we were originally thinking of maybe a correspondence school. Now with the internet, it is, I mean, it just totally broadens and widens the scope of the possibilities, making it available and accessible to people all over the world. So be sure and check it out at HyattInstitute.com. HyattInstitute.com. And I will put a link in the description area of this podcast. Now, today we are going to begin in Acts chapter 10, which is a chapter that is packed with incredible truths. And it is the story of an Italian man named Cornelius, who was, and I say he was Italian because it says here in chapter 10, verse 1, it says there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment. So he was a Roman army official, and he was stationed in Caesarea, which would have been in the northern part of Israel. Now, verse 2 describes him as a devout man and one who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people and prayed to God always. Now, uh, this is very interesting. He is not a believer. He's not a follower of Jesus, but he is a person who has a heart towards God and is seeking to know God. He is described as one, a devout man who feared God. Now, let me just mention this. I'll tell you what category he is probably in. In the Jewish synagogues of the first century, there were three kinds of people. There were the people who were born Jewish. They were Jewish by birth. Then there were the Gentile proselytes who had adopted Judaism as their faith and the God of Israel as their God, and so the men would have been circumcised, and they began keeping all of the Jewish feasts and festivals and traditions, and so they were the Jewish proselytes. They were Gentile converts to Judaism. But then in the synagogues, there were also the God-fearers, as they were called. These were Gentiles who were attracted to the God of Israel. They weren't ready to commit themselves to all of the Jewish traditions and regulations and keeping all the feasts, but they would come to the synagogue to hear the reading of the scriptures and to hear rabbis and synagogue leaders expound about the scriptures and about the coming Messiah. So it would seem that Cornelius was in this group of the God-fearers. He's described as a devout man who feared God, and so he gave alms, or that he gave donations. He helped people who were in need. He was a generous man. He was a caring and a compassionate man, and he prayed regularly and even fasted. And so here is a man who is sincerely seeking God. And here's something I want you to see, that God moves miraculously to get the message of salvation to him. And there is so much for us to learn in this. So one day he is in prayer and he has a vision. And in the vision, an angel of God came in and said to him, Cornelius. And he said to the angel, or I'm sorry, and and he was afraid and said, "What is it, Lord?" And the angel said to him, "Your prayers and your alms, that is, your generosity, your helping the people in need, have come up uh, for a memorial before God." Now here's what is interesting. His prayers, his fastings, and his generosity was not enough to save him. My friends, this is such a clear picture that we cannot be saved by good works because we are dealing with an infinitely holy and pure and righteous being, uh, in whose light human righteousness is, as the Bible says, is like filthy rags. I think it was just today. Sue and I were driving, and we turned into towards the sun, and the sun shining on the windshield, it showed up all of the dirt and all the spots that we didn't see before. And so this is a very clear passage of how human work will not save us. And so the angel tells him what he needs to do to be saved. He says to him, uh, I want you to send men to Joppa and send for Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodging with Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea. He will tell you what you must do. And so there is a passage in the next chapter, chapter 11, where Peter is later describing this. And he says, he describes it like this. It says, then the Spirit, he's telling what the angel said to Cornelius. Then the Spirit told me to go with them, nothing doubting. Moreover, the 6 brethren accompanied me, and we entered the man's house, and he told us how he had seen an angel standing in his house, who said to him, send men to Joppa and call for Simon, whose surname is Peter, who will tell you words by which you and all your household will be saved. So Cornelius is praying, fasting, uh, giving gifts to people who were in need. That did not make him right with God. But God saw his sincerity. And so God supernaturally moves to get the message to him, the words to him of how he can be saved. So people often ask the question, well, what about the people who have never heard the gospel? Will they go to hell who never had a chance to hear the gospel? I think there is an answer to that in the story of Cornelius. If people are sincerely reaching out and seeking to know God, God will move. Even if he has to move in a supernatural way, he will get the message of salvation to those people who are sincerely seeking after him. I have read recently of in the Middle East that Muslims have been seeing supernatural visions, appearances of Jesus appearing to them and revealing himself to them as the only way to God. So I believe with all my heart, and I believe this passage teaches that when people are sincerely seeking after God, and there are people in the world who don't know Jesus, never heard the gospel, but they have a sincere desire to know God, that God will move in such a way to get the message of salvation to them. And so now God is working on both ends. While he's speaking, sending an angel to speak to Cornelius, he's speaking to Peter in a supernatural vision. Now, it's amazing to us how the followers of Jesus are still so prejudiced against Gentiles. And Peter is still very prejudiced. And so, and I think from what we read here, that if Peter had not had this supernatural encounter and vision from the Lord, that he may not have gone with these people. But before they get to Peter, he's up on the rooftop praying, and he sees a vision of all these animals let down in a sheet that he, as a Jew, is not supposed to eat. And he hears a voice saying, Peter, rise and eat. And Peter, being the good Jewish boy that he is, said, not so, Lord. I have never eaten anything unclean. I have never eaten anything that is forbidden in your law. And the sheet was lifted up. Then it came down again, and the very same thing. And then it lifted up, came down a third time. And Peter, rise and eat. Not so, Lord. I've never eaten anything unclean. It's never come into my mouth. You really can't say, not so, Lord. If he is Lord, the only thing you can say is, yes, Lord. I will obey. I will do what you say. So after the third time and after the vision lifts, Peter, he's thinking on this. I wonder what this means. And at that time, he hears a knock on the door. I want you to know that when God is speaking to you about another place, another person, he's also working on the other end. He's working on both ends. And uh, as he's meditating and reflecting on what this vision means, these people, these Gentiles, are knocking at the door, and they say to him, "Well, Cornelius, our master, he had a visitation of an angel, told him to send to this house to you and tell you that you had words to speak to him, by which him and all of his household will be saved." And Peter said, "Wow, now I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, and that I am not to call anybody unclean. I am not to avoid anybody simply because of their race or ethnicity." And so Peter goes and he preaches the good news to them, and we'll deal with that in tomorrow's session. But what I want you to see in this, that God responds to those who sincerely seek him. I believe it's Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. Let me see if I can remember this in closing. It says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently or sincerely seek him. Yes, he is a rewarder of those who diligently and sincerely seek him. That's the key to Cornelius. He was diligently and sincerely seeking the Lord. And, and, and now here's something I want to mention too. The angel couldn't tell him how to be saved. No, the angel could only tell him where he could go and find a human being who had the words, who had the message to tell him how it could be saved. No, we can't pray and say, "Lord, send your angels to reach the lost and tell them." No, we can't do that. God may send an angel and give the unsaved, give the pagan person your name and say, "Send for this person to come and tell them." But no, angels don't preach the gospel. Human beings have been given the commission and the responsibility to be witnesses unto Jesus and take the gospel to the ends of the earth. Well, I'm Eddie Hyatt. We'll pick up on this tomorrow, but I'm so glad to be back with you. And check out my website, eddiehyatt.com. Check out the Hyatt Institute at hyattinstitute.com, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless you.